The story begins November 1999. Two Cuban-American cousins, a lot of loquacious talk about Latin America today, but two Cuban-American cousins were out fishing in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Florida. What did they find? The inner tube of a tire and a small boy floating on it. Elian Gonzalez wasn't even 6 years old at the time. This dramatic rescue by itself would be an amazing story, but as it turned out, it's just the start of a 7-month saga. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. I followed this story with considerable interest because at the time, I was a single, non-custodial father to 2 sons. And I believed then, and I believe now, that such fathers do not have their paternal rights well respected. As it turns out, Elian's parents were divorced before Elian was even born, but they shared custody of the boy. However, the mother decided that she wanted to leave Cuba for the United States. She arranged with 10 others to take this rickety aluminum boat with a malfunctioning motor and to escape to Florida. And without telling the boy's father, the mother took Elian with her. I've heard stories of fathers who take their children without telling the mothers, and the media labels them as kidnapping. Well, as it turns out, the boat never made it. It sank. Only 3 survived. Elian was one of the survivors. His mother was not. When the father, Juan Miguel Gonzalez Quintana, had found out that the mother had taken the boy, he contacted family of his in Miami. And he was under the impression that the family would help him get the boy back. And as it turns out, temporary custody of Elian was given to Juan Miguel's family in Miami. But problems arose when outside parties became involved. First, Juan Miguel contacted the Cuban government, let them know what was going on, and he received a visit from none other than the very loquacious Fidel Castro. Castro told him that he would do whatever he could to help him get his boy back. The family in Miami, they contacted this very large and powerful group of Cuban exiles called the Cuban American National Foundation. How much the CANF actually influenced the family? Well, that's open to debate. But there was this cousin of Juan Miguel's, her name, Maris Laces, just 21 years old, single, no experience bringing up a child. And she declared that she was the boy's guardian. And she declared that she was the spokesman for the family. And declared that under no circumstances would she allow Elian to be returned to Cuba. And the CANF backed her up. Maris Laces had 2 reasons for this. First, she said that the boy's mother had given her life trying to get the boy out of Cuba to the United States. And secondly, She said that Juan Miguel must be an unfit father if he's not willing to leave Cuba. To the first point, I questioned the mother's judgment not only by taking the boy without asking the father, but taking the boy onto that unsafe boat across the Atlantic. And perhaps she did put the boy's safety ahead of hers when the boat sank. But it still took a miracle for Elian Gonzalez to survive 2 days all alone out in the Atlantic Ocean. For Juan Miguel, during these 7 months, he was constantly being interviewed by United States media. Eventually, he even went to the United States to try to get the boy back. But at no point does he come across like he's speaking under duress. At no point does he come across like a crazy man, unfit to be the father. He stays on message. He's the boy's sole surviving parent. He wanted custody of his son, and he didn't want to be forced to leave his homeland. He handled himself magnificently, like a true Toastmaster. But what did Fidel Castro do? He started all these mass rallies in Havana and throughout Cuba in support of Juan Miguel's paternal rights. What politician in the United States will be influenced by demonstrations in Cuba? All that happened was that the CANF became even more hard-nosed, more insistent that Elian could never go back to Cuba, regardless of what his father wanted. And so powerful was this group that there was no government official in the Miami area or throughout Florida that dared oppose them. They formed a human circle around the house where Elian was being kept. And there were many vows, including by Mara Slices herself, that if the federal government tried to get Elian, they would be met with violent resistance. Well, the president at the time was Bill Clinton, the Attorney General, Janet Reno. They insisted upon the rule of law, which said that Juan Miguel was the surviving parent and he had right to custody of the child. But they wanted to use quiet diplomacy. They opened up a line of communication with the family. And there were negotiations. Reports are that the negotiations were going well. But demonstrations continued in Cuba. The CANF became even more intransigent in opposing Juan Miguel's paternal rights. Eventually, Janet Reno had to send in U.S. Marshals, who very efficiently rescued Elian. Only one report of a minor injury to a bystander. It was U.S. Marshals who returned Elian to his father, returned him on U.S. soil. Later on, the two flew back to Cuba. Say what you want about Fidel Castro, but he did not stay in power as long as he did by being stupid. The guy must have known that the best interest of Juan Miguel and his family was in quiet diplomacy. He must have known that the demonstrations would just inflame the CANF and cause more trouble. And today, A lot of people agree that Fidel Castro purposely tried to embarrass the Cuban American community. And if that was the case, he did so brilliantly. Polls after polls showed that the vast majority of the American public supported Juan Miguel's paternal rights. But Fidel Castro had an unwitting ally, and that was in the U.S. media. Because the U.S. media was making it look like the entire Cuban community in Florida was monolithic in opposing Juan Miguel's paternal rights. This isn't true. Juan Miguel himself had 3 uncles living in Miami, and one of those 3 uncles supported Juan Miguel from start to finish. But did anybody hear of this? Why wasn't it reported? And even those 2 cousins who found the boy out in the ocean, they wound up on opposite ends of this issue. But for me personally, it doesn't matter that Juan Miguel preferred to stay in Cuba when he had the opportunity to emigrate to the United States. Because I consider Juan Miguel Gonzalez Quintana to be a hero for single fathers everywhere. Mr. Toastmaster.